All right, it's Friday, April 5th. This is an end of the day and end of the week SPY recap. And today on the daily chart, we end up with a inside day that's a little bit green. We stayed inside the high and low of the previous day. The previous day was the big red bar where we made a higher high and a lower low. That's broadening action on that time frame. When you get that, the question is, are you just kind of making higher highs, lower lows, and maybe bouncing around back to higher highs? Or is that the beginning of broadening action on one time frame that could lead to bigger picture broadening action on a higher time frame if it follows through? So I was certainly expecting a follow through lower, but expectations are just what you come into the session with, and then you got to watch price action and see what happens. I certainly knew this was a possibility to stay inside of this bar, given that it's just a 3 bar in this time frame, and also given that there was an economic release in the morning, a very important one that was going to affect the market. It could have even gapped up a lot bigger. But as it turned out on the 15-minute chart, just looking at it, it would have had to kind of go below the pre-market lows and follow through lower to get that 2 down continuation, and instead price right out of the gates moved up. It took out that pre-market high. At that point, you wanted to see maybe you'd get the green to red move to continue lower to test those lows, but instead it consolidated and broke to the upside. So the bias was up right out of the gates, and again, it wasn't something I was looking to trade to the upside. Just knowing you have this big red bar in here, I was biased a little bit lower, and I just kind of wanted to see what would happen. Like I discussed on the recap yesterday, this bar is difficult to get out of, and that's kind of the key thing going forward, which I'll get into, is how we're going to get out of this bar going forward. But it did retrace a pretty decent amount of that bar, and we closed right in the middle. If you think about it, the closing price was right in the middle of this bar. So I'll get into into next week what we're looking for in a second. But in terms of today, it was just up all the way, little pullback at this point, and it didn't do anything. It kind of, if you want to look at it, maybe you made one push, pause, 2 pushes up to the top, the high end of that range from yesterday, somewhere up in here, and then it settled in for the rest of the day. So in terms of trading, there was nothing. Either you did nothing, just given the fact you might have been biased to the downside, or you could have bought in here, just said, all right, intraday structure seems to be opening up above the pre-market highs and above the opening price bar and continuing higher. So you anticipate an inside bar in here. So that was the only trade possibility if you wanted to take it. I was looking around at all my stocks once I saw the market really wasn't going lower. First of all, out of the gates, I did shoot a video how I immediately, just with my downward bias, I bought some puts on AMD here when it, right on the 1-minute chart, when it took out the pre-market high and turned red. I anticipated those lows, going lower, and this was a stock I identified. I scaled out when it hits target here, these pre-market lows, and when it came right back up on that first bar, this is the 1-minute chart. I showed how I took a small gain overall in the trade. I broke even on the second half of the trade. And as it turned out, AMD kind of went up for the rest of the day, like a lot of stocks that decided to start higher. This is the 1-minute chart, kind of zoomed out. So it was just never really went down from the start, and scaling out kind of gave me a small gain. But then I noticed Meta had a very nice opening price action to buy, and this is a green. I highlighted this in green because I bought this stock today, and it made one push up, pause, second push. So this is a very nice trade to the upside. And then I actually decided to go short a couple of stocks. Tesla identified as below the pre-market lows, below yesterday's low, a 2 down thing. So I puts on this red bar. I had a very nice trade here in the morning to the downside, and I decided the same thing to kind of sell Coinbase when I saw it make it kind of 1 push, 2 pushes up, red bar. I bought some puts here, and that moved down nicely all day long. So there was both ways to go inside the choppy environment of the SPY, which is inside. So anyway, going forward, what does it mean? We now end up with a 2 down week that essentially kind of failed to reach its target, but to me, it's still red. I don't see this as a great hammer bar that I expect to go higher, and yet there is enough of a buying tail down here where it's uncertain. And that makes sense given if you look at the daily chart that we're inside of this bar. So where do we go next week? This actionable signal is maybe back to the upside here. You buy that and see if we can take out that high, or if we get a downward move, then you kind of would take that to the downside and see if we break through that area and get that 2 down week compounding down to its targets down here. So a lot's going to happen on price action relative to how this inside bar, do we break high or low? Also for me, I'm always looking for failures for inside bars. So while I will begin to take prices that move up or down, I also know that if we can't get, come down and hit targets and follow through, we can come back up through that range. So that will be kind of an exciting development for me. If we come down and then can't really follow through and start back up, I'll get bullish, and if we go up a little bit and can't hit this target up here and come back down, I'll get bearish. So I don't know if that's going to happen on the first day of the week, but that's something I'm going to keep an eye on as far as how this weekly chart is going to resolve going forward. Because to me, we're still red on the month and the quarter. So until we get above that purple line, I'm biased to the downside. Still, there's a long way to go in the month, and to me, this is still a red bar, even though it's had a little bit of buying in here, or at least a little consolidation after the move down. So I could easily see it continuing lower. So I'm still kind of biased to the downside, just given this red bar that I don't think is easy to break back up. Today, it could have come all the way back up, but it didn't do that. We're right in the middle. So let's just see what happens. Again, it's the same thing as always. You expect certain things given what happens, the day before, or how the weekly chart's unfolding, but it's always price action that, guides what I do. And that's why I always look at the opening price and the pre-market range. And time and time again, it sort of at least guides you as to what's unfolding for the day and how that relates to some of your expectations. And sometimes when expectations don't materialize, then, it's a powerful move in the opposite direction to consider, if you're not getting what you expected. Obviously, I expected things to go lower, and if this would have opened up and went down, I would have strongly, gotten to the sell side. But, there was just no way to do that given price action. So that's why, to me, I always use, how things open and what the pre-market range is and what this first bar is and how that all fits into the game plan and, or at least my expectations. And sometimes expectations change, and then, that's the puzzle that's always evolving day after day after day. So to me, inside bar here, that we got to get and we got to get out of this red bar. I mean, that's the bottom line. So, and right now, in order to get out to the downside, you got to get an inside bar down to start that process. So, I could see with a pretty big range in here, maybe we stay inside again, and that'll be tough trading for a while if we stay inside. But eventually, that could lead to a breakout one way or the other, or it could lead to a breakout failure. And I've discussed that on previous videos a lot. When I have it inside, if this goes sideways for a while, eventually there'll be a powerful move out of it, and a lot of times even, it could be a failure to go down and then we start back up big, because I still think the monthly and quarterly charts are going to be taken out to the upside. So, I can almost envision like inside price action here failing, coming at that point, that'll be a strong buy signal to really start that uptrend again, that I think, on the monthly and quarterly charts is going to take out its previous highs up here. This is the monthly chart, quarterly chart had these 3 bars are green, and eventually I think we'll get higher in the next 3 months, but when and how it's going to happen, I don't know. So let's just see what unfolds for next week. But for today, it was just an inside day, and you had to kind of look at individual stocks. And, there were still good opportunities out there. But in terms of the SPY itself, if you just solely trade that, the upside was the only way to go. And you had 2 pushes up in the morning, and that was your trade. And, sometimes it's, you're not always focused on the SPY to trade when things aren't aligning well. But today, that's what intraday price action was all about, to the upside. And it was pretty clear right out of the start. So we will see what happens again, as always, starting next week. Again, how do we get out of this big red bar is the story for now, and there is a potential for failure given that you have an inside bar here. So keep that in mind. Those will be more powerful to me, given an attempt to break one way and then go the other way, or an attempt to go down and then come back up. That's sort of what's in my mind right now, but as always, that could change as well. So let's see what happens next week.